Hey guys, I was watching toy documentaries, and I had a question for you to start off our show. An observation icebreaker brought to you by Mason Kramer, twitch.tv/glitchcat7. Because you guys really need to start talking about something like this, and I know you're gonna have an opinion. What do you think would be a harder collection to complete? Star Wars dollies or Barbie dollies?
I don't know enough about Barbies.
Oh man.
Star War.
Wrong.
Barbies.
Wrong. Glenn, what dolly do you like?
Neither.
I want to see Evening Ground Prickridge.
Neither would be hard to collect. Get out of here. Get the hell out of here. What do you
Why are you
say?
drinking coffee, prick wrong?
Easy, he.
Stella for you and Tim for Brickridge.
He's got a Stella.
I'm going to call him Tim from now on.
Tim
Well,
the Enchanter.
I guess Barbies came out in the 1880s.
1957.
So that's a long time ago.
57 or 59, somewhere in there.
But
They got 20 years on Star Wars.
I guess I don't know enough about Barbies to know how many different dolls they release every quarter compared to Star Wars waves. So
The first Barbie actually had only 200 printing, much like a famed game that we know, Duck Hunt. And it's hard to find that original Dolly doll. What do you think, Tim? Right.
I don't really have an opinion. Oh
Good-
man, you
good
got
start
to
to the
have
show.
an opinion.
Please just use that every time we ask you a question for the next hour.
Sure.
I don't really have an opinion. Next.
I'm not. Toys are not my forte.
oh,
Toys are not Tim.
toys aren't your forte. Grow up.
Let's talk about guitars. What do you think would be hard to collect? Les Paul guitars or Rickenbackers?
Rickenbackers.
Wrong.
Ricky Dicky Doo.
Yeah.
Welcome to GamerCast. I'm Rob. That's Jay. This is Tim.
Hi.
Say
Hello.
hi, Tim.
Who the hell's Tim? Oh, him.
Him.
Him. Oh, him.
Tim. Tim Stanbuck. Tim.
We're calling you from Echo Base right now. Rob's on Tatooine. We're on Echo Base. It's April 60th, and it's friggin' snowing here in Canada. All the myths are true. We do live in igloos, and it snows all year
Igloos?
round. I'm getting the hell out of here.
This is breakfast land. We live in igloos.
We do. We live in egos.
I like some egos. I miss waffles from the Power Tour trip and Nintendo Quest. That's a highlight of every day.
Do you know,
Waffles.
I never figured out how to use that damn thing.
It's not hard. You put the batter in it, you walk away, and you come back, and it's done.
Yeah.
See-
You put the battery in, you close it, and you turn it. I think.
Yeah, see, I would put the batter and walk away.
Yeah.
The hotel
that
would be on
explains some of
fire.
the comments that I got on the survey cards.
Turn the power, walk away.
Did you guys know that we're having a big Twitch screening of Fun and Hilarity for Nintendo Quest on April 24th at 12, 2, and 4 p.m. with our good buddy Glitchcat Mason Kramer? Did you know that?
Yeah, I knew it.
As a matter of fact, yes. Yes, we
Things
did
are
know that.
happening for it. It's still happening. April 24th, 12/2, 4 p.m., twitch.tv/glitchcat7. We'll be there answering all your Nintendo Quest questions. If you want to watch it ahead of time, get yourself a copy and get yourself a copy of the Power Tour. Just head on down to nintendoquest.com. You can actually combine purchases now. We've had a lot of people asking, how can I save shipping and get 2 discs instead of paying double shipping? I don't know. Here, use this link, is what I said. And they did, and now they've ordered them. So that's what you can do as well. You can go to nintendoquest.com and buy some discs if you like. Support our cause. The box art Kickstarter is less than a week away. In fact, by the time this comes out, I think it's only 3 or 4 days away. It launches Tuesday, April 19th. We're putting a lot of hours into it as the clock winds down. And excited to share that with everybody. Usually we plug Dash Quest at this point, but I happened to notice that our good buddy Jeff Evans and Tiny Titan were part of a panel. Glenn, what's the 3-sentence version of that panel? What happened?
The 3-sentence version of that panel?
That's one sentence.
There was there's a London business organization that runs this panel, and I guess they do it monthly. But it's sort of like a founders thing, so they have all kinds of people representing different industries in London basically coming and talking about their involvement in London economics and kind of what their deal is and where they come from. And Jeff was invited to take part this time and got to talk about Tiny Titan.
That's cool.
It's kind of cool. Yeah, it was a really wide range of people there. I know the guy who founded Dipley.com was one of the other people on the panel this time.
Cool. My cousin works at Dipley.
But yeah, so that was what that was about, and I don't think Jeff really knew what to expect, but I think he really, really enjoyed it, and he felt like he was able to offer a unique perspective. And I know in the story that we were sharing on social media a couple of days ago, he was very heavily quoted. I mean, he was featured quite prominently in that story. So,
is there video of this discussion by chance?
I don't know if there is. I don't think Jeff is aware of there being any. I don't think that necessarily means there isn't any, but
Right.
But I haven't heard if there is or not yet.
Well, that would be great. If not, you can definitely check out the article. Just go search out Tiny Titan on Facebook, give them a like, give them a tug, and give it a read. Jay, what's going on with Galaxy Far, Far Away? What are you guys talking about this week?
We got a big week this week. We finally got to see the first trailer for Rogue One,
Yeah.
which I woke up at 9 a.m. that morning, and I had 16,000 tags and messages. So thank you, everyone, for that. That was awesome.
Save your thoughts for your cast. I don't want you to spoil your thoughts on it. I want to make sure everybody gets to go to Galaxy Far, Far Away to hear all your in-depth thoughts on Rogue One. But what else are you guys talking about?
Part 3 of Han Solo. And we're going to be talking about the Blu-ray. That just came out too, which is just crazy.
I just watched all the features yesterday.
It's cool now that you get the Blu-ray and they throw in the DVD and they throw in a digital copy for like $24 Canadian, which is awesome. I think, I wish that they've been doing this the whole time because you get 3 movies for one.
How many different packages did they release in Canada?
There's the Best Buy exclusive with, I think it's Kylo Ren, and the one at Walmart had BB-8 on the front. And then there's another one with all of them, but I can't remember what retailer carried that.
Yeah, there's 4 here, and
Yeah.
I have the one that is from Best Buy here. It said Star Wars: The Force Awakens, like the teaser poster, but it had everybody within the Star Wars.
And then you take the
font.
sleeve off and then you have the...
Nope. No,
No?
it's just Star Wars still. There's 4 covers. There's Kylo, BB, and then there's all of them that is a kind of like shattered mirror looking, and then there's the one it's just the Starfield.
That's very cool.
How are the special features on that?
Oh, I loved it. I've only watched just basically the concept of the film to where it was. So like the first table reading and all that, I saw all that, and it was really cool. And I can't believe how many computer graphic effects are in that movie and how well they're done that you can't really tell. Like there's a lot of computer graphics in The Force Awakens.
I don't know if you guys saw that. A few weeks ago, they posted something like that for Deadpool, and it was like a breakdown of everything that went into that sort of highway fight sequence.
Yeah.
And it's mind-blowing how much of that is CG that isn't obviously CG.
Well, when we get to the Twitch screening for Nintendo Quest, we're going to talk about all the CG that we have in Nintendo Quest. It'll blow people's minds.
There's a lot. I can't believe
There's just
there's a
so
lot,
much
man.
sky replacement. We're erasing rigs when we're doing the flying scenes, when we're doing like the 360 martial arts game hunting stuff. Oh man, what a good CG!
Do you remember the most expensive scene though? Was when we had to CG my hair for that one part.
Yes,
That cost a lot
I
of money,
remember
so I
that. Yes,
apologize for
we had to
that,
We had
but-
to do that. Well, it just had to be done.
On the subject of the Blu-ray package, Jay, you were talking about how you get your Blu-ray disc and your DVD and your digital copy with it. Do you guys think they should do that for games? I have felt for a very long time they should.
You mean like a physical and a digital package?
Exactly. Like for people who maybe have more than one console in the house or that kind of thing. I understand that just having that code out in the wild would be kind of weird, but I mean, I think if you linked it to your account and kind of had it as like a limited one-time use thing sort of idea.
It was cool because when the movie launched, I had a bunch of our pals on Facebook, can I donate the code to a galaxy far, far away? And I'm like, sure, and I gave a couple away. I absolutely think. I think that's the good fight, the physical versus the digital. They're trying to be like, okay, here's the movie on Blu-ray, here's the DVD, which I gave to my mom, and then the digital, which I put on my iPad. So
right.
I'll be honest, gaming is the only medium that doesn't do it. CDs usually include a digital download.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Movies, you can buy packaged movies without the digital aspect, but most of it is the three-way at this point.
Like a good example of this is I bought The Division as a digital game, and the reason I did that is that allows me to have two different people in my house be able to play that on two different accounts at the same time without me having to buy two copies of the game. But if I could have gone into a store and bought a physical copy that included a download code so I could install it on another Xbox that I own as well, like that, I would have done that in a heartbeat.
I don't see how it could really hurt the industry. I think, yeah.
Well, in the same way that you just gave your mom a copy of Star Wars, right?
Yeah, but I think, again, battling the digital versus physical, right? I think it's just an added plus of, hey, go buy the physical because you're going to get another copy of the game, too. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I almost feel like it's like if they could somehow... that gets messy because then you're dealing with DRM and stuff like that, but it's almost like if you had to register your Xbox Live account to redeem the code or something like that, so it was like locked to your account to keep you from just giving that code away to somebody else so they had a free copy of it.
See, and it's hard because on that note, for Nintendo Quest, when we gave our digital copies away, other people that bought the disc wanted it, but we couldn't generate more without running into the issue that we had for the 70 people that did get a digital code. Dealing with them and their DRM issues and Vimeo as a platform was really messy, let alone trying to deal with digital copies for iTunes or through VHX or some other kind of site. So because it's a little bit like the Wild West where people want to get these digital versions, it makes it really difficult for us to manage.
I think it was the Blu-ray for Star Wars was cool because in Canada, at least, there was the DVD bare bones on its own, and then there was the Blu-ray, and you didn't have a choice. You got all the stuff with it. So,
but that's been going on for the last probably 5 years, especially with Disney titles. Every Disney title, so like every Pixar movie that's come out, I've always got that extra DVD that I've given to nieces or nephews. Like, here you go.
Yeah,
you can have this. And
that's awesome, man.
And then when I'm on a plane, I'm watching the digital version because I've got it on iTunes ahead of time. So,
well, it's just that approach to trying to make the physical product more appealing than the digital one, right? It's
for sure.
Just try and make it a lot more value.
I'll be honest. I got the Blu-ray just for the documentary stuff.
Yeah.
And it's only an hour and 10 minutes long, and some of those sections are expanded. Like they go into much more depth. Like I think it's 7 minutes long on the music with John Williams, for example, and the creature stuff is another 6 minutes. But the crux of it is an hour and 10 minutes, and that's worth the $20 to me.
Is there commentary on it?
I didn't see commentary.
Not that I saw, no. But no, even the first.
But you wait when that trilogy is done. I'm betting there will be a re-release.
That'd be cool with J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson and what's his face from 9. That'd be cool.
Colin Trevorrow.
There you
go.
So
it's cool. Some of the stuff that they filmed is pretty interesting. Stuff I didn't expect to see. Anyways, back to GamerCast. This was a mini episode of Galaxy Far, Far Away.
This is GamerCast. We're talking about pop culture stuff.
Speaking of pop culture studs, I got a letter sent to us. You guys want me to read this letter? Should we just skip it over like we did last week?
Go ahead. Why don't you go ahead over there, Paulie? Go ahead.
Hello, dudos. I'm irked by all this talk of cover bands between Glenn's Spoonman and Jay's tribute gig Rocket Queen. When will we hear an original track from the GamerCast crew? Rob plays guitar, Glenn can sing and play bass, whilst Jay, you smooth criminal you, can hold the Rubens section together. I think he meant to say rhythm and got auto-type corrected by the delicious sandwich. Also, I think you guys do talk about yourselves a lot, son of a bitch, and drink ego juice at least before recording.
That's great.
Then again, I did hang out with you guys, and all you wanted to talk about was your movie, so maybe it's not just before recording. Ugh, whatever. The British biscuit can handle it. You ain't so bad. I'm over here, and yes, I am listening to your show again, quite regular this time. Still waiting for your NES game. Is that ever coming? Feels like the film all over again. Should you port it to the Game Boy, I can play that on my television now thanks to a Game Boy player adapter and a GC. I think he means a GameCube. Glenn, I know you got a GC not long ago. Do you plan on getting the Game Boy player for it? Okay, lads, off to swim with the fishes and find a Jane Doe to spoil before the weekend vanishes. Take care, and thanks for reading as always. Hope to write in more frequently, but my temper gets the best of me as I hear your shenanigans and ramblings of BS that at time makes it hard to put pen to paper. Cheers, Marco.
2 things, Marco. One, you're a huge Nintendo fan, so you should be used to waiting. So the game's going to come when the game's going to come. 2, my friend, I'm not in a cover band. I'm in a tribute band.
Well, he said...
There's a difference.
He says at the beginning, I'm marked by all this talk of cover bands between Glenn Spoonman and Jay's tribute gig.
Oh, okay. You're forgiven, Marco. And by the way, I am over here.
And third, get the hell out of here.
Come on over here. Now get the hell out of here.
My favorite part is...
Get over here.
Okay,
Get out of here.
okay, lads, off to swim with the fishes and find a Jane Doe to spoil before the weekend vanishes.
Ian's playing Limb Hunter.
That's awesome.
Limb Hunter.
To answer the question that was directed at me, I don't know that I plan to get a Game Boy player from a GameCube, Marco. I'm not a huge Game Boy enthusiast, although there are a couple of really solid Game Boy Advance Metroid games. So
You might have missed the boat on that, buddy. That was a couple years ago. I mean, you can still get one. Yeah. I'm just saying. Vinny's looking at me with the eye over here, Paulie. I'm gonna get the hell
You
out of
punched
here.
him in the mouth.
What's
So, yeah, as far as the game, the game is coming, of course. We are still working with Joe. He's working on his stuff, and we're next in line. I think we said a couple weeks ago, we hope the game comes out, early March next year by the time all the dust settles. So it is coming, and there you go. Here's something for you guys. It's kind of a bit of a guessing game before we jump right in. Ian and I were talking back and forth on Facebook, and I want you to guess the franchise that he's talking about when he makes this statement, okay? Now, this franchise can be anywhere in gaming history, any publisher, any developer, but I want to see if you can guess what he's talking about. He says, "What about it? I like the game and am one of the minority of supporters, but I know it's not great and a huge missed opportunity. Don't expand a classic defined title to realms where it does not exist ever. It never works and nobody applauds your bravery. If you have that much of a branching idea, then make it into another game. The line between evolving an idea to altering it is always mistaken."
Is this a specific Nintendo title?
Sure, I'll give you that hint.
Well, I would say Metroid. That spells out Metroid to me.
Glenn?
What about you?
The crux of it is that don't expand a classic title to realms where it doesn't exist ever. It never works, and nobody applauds your bravery. That's the middle part of his statement.
I don't feel like it's Metroid because I feel like this is probably in relation to a newer title or a more recently released title that ties into an existing franchise. But what? I guess it could be Metroid if it was Federation Force or whatever.
What's the answer?
Star Fox.
That was going to be my
Is the-
second guess.
That was my first guess, actually. But I figured that it's
Which
still
is funny. So I said Star Fox and Star Fox Assault, and then he gives me that statement. I said, "Oh, what, like Metroid?"
That's funny. From everything I've seen, it looks like Star Fox to me, so I don't
Yeah, I don't
understand
really know
where
if
he's
I
going.
understand that because
Yeah.
it does still look like the core gameplay is still Star Fox.
Well, you know what? You can tell him to get the hell out.
Maybe he's talking about the transforming tank part or whatever,
But how is that anything more than an addition to what?
no, but I mean, it's still a third-person flying shooter.
Yeah, this isn't me defending the game either. I just don't know that I understand the argument.
It's okay. Let's start the show with this week's topic.
This week's topic, guys, is going to be something that should be close to all of our hearts because we've talked about this. This has come up over the last couple of weeks, and we've talked about this a little bit, about how we fit into the gaming landscape and what our role...
How the we fits into the gaming landscape?
No, how we, not the we, how we, as in you and Jay and I, fit into the gaming landscape and what our roles are as gaming personalities. And therefore, what I wanted to talk about is the idea of celebrity in gaming and the idea of being famous in gaming and how that applies to developers, how that applies to streamers, how that applies to people who make videos and have subscribers on YouTube, media personalities, like just anybody who's kind of a known entity in the game industry right now.
Okay, cool.
So the first thing I want to ask you is, how do you think that the nature of celebrity is different when it applies to personalities in the gaming industry versus what we would normally consider to be a celebrity?
I think they might be a tad lesser known, and I'm quoting the great Todd Rogers on this, where he told me that he is one of the biggest celebrities. Of course, I'm paraphrasing, but he's a big celebrity in the gaming industry, and then he walks down the street and nobody knows who he is. Where if you're looking at someone like Brad Pitt, who's a movie star, you might not know all his films, but you know that that's Brad Pitt walking down the street.
I don't think the culture of the individual has just been pushed in gaming. I think there's very few instances where we can name people specifically because... And actually, most art forms start like that. So it doesn't really surprise me that this is the case of where we are in gaming, where the individual kind of artist or marketable name is kind of behind the curtain. I mean, I think back to like early movies when it was more about the studio until like Charlie Chaplin and, you know, Fairbanks and Mary Pickford. Mary Pickford started United Artists. You know, we don't get a lot of name talent until just recently with like Kojima is now putting his name on games. So when you pick up a game, it says a game by Hideo Kojima. Some people through time and through such popular buzz have got out there like Miyamoto. But I'm guessing it would be hard for us to name more than 10 off the top of our heads, people, industry leaders.
I'm going to take you up on that challenge in a moment, but I want to come
after you've done some research for the outline.
Yeah, that's bullcrap.
I want to come back. I want to come back to a name you just mentioned, which is Miyamoto. And this is sort of my way of rephrasing the first question, but do you guys think that Shigeru Miyamoto is a household name?
No.
Like, is Shigeru Miyamoto a proper celebrity, or is he somebody who's just sort of famous in the game community?
I personally think in the game community, yeah, and some people might know who he is, but I don't think he's Steven Spielberg, you know, if you were to say Steven Spielberg. I don't think it's... I agree with Rob, I don't think we've got to that point yet.
I think the only celebrity in the gaming world is Mario, in the same way that Mickey Mouse is just well known outside, you know, by everybody.
You know, it's funny, I've talked about Bushnell in the early days of Atari. It's one of my favorite periods in gaming, and how he treated his programmers like celebrities. They were rock stars. And then when Atari crashed and the game industry was done for a bit, it just kind of never sprang back. But he made it a point to make sure that all his programmers were the head of the parties. You know, when their games came out, they were the stars. They got all the attention. And yeah, when the game industry died, so did that ideal. And I wish it would come back.
Rob, you talked about how there hasn't really been a focus on the individual in video gaming traditionally. But I think it is safe to say that as we're sort of in this modern era of gaming, that individuals are certainly becoming more prominent than they once were. Do you think that's a new concept? Like, have there always been those notable people in gaming? Like Jay, you brought up Nolan Bushnell. Have they always been there, or is it just a matter of us just starting to see them now? Like, is it just more obvious now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the mentality that people are going to stand behind a company first and foremost, and that company is going to be bigger than an individual because of the very idea that it's a symbol. Like, it's like Batman, right? The symbol of Batman will be bigger than who he is. You can't destroy what he represents. It's that symbol that strikes fear into you. So for games, it's the name Nintendo, it's the name Atari that represents something bigger than the people. Now we're starting to see it shift. And again, I mentioned, film. Film did the same thing. Universal Pictures was bigger than any one director. Was bigger than any one actor or writer. And then it slowly started to change that, wait a second, this one guy happens to be doing all these things. He is kind of a big deal. And then when that guy or girl starts to realize it and they start pushing it, then that's when they start becoming kind of their own. I guess celebrity is really the best way to say it, because it's about celebration of the individual without being an ego thing in the way that people think of celebrity news, like TMZ kind of crap. I think it takes a while for somebody to become worthy of celebrity and stand on par with companies.
There's been a few over the years, and as you were talking, I remembered a couple in the 90s. Trip Hawkins was very adamant about, I'm going to bring out this machine that's just going to pretty much crush everything. And he was very vocal about it. Of course, the 3DO didn't do that, but he was a rock star in the 90s. And then someone even like in the 2000s, probably going to pronounce his name wrong, Peter Molyneux, who did Fable. And when Fable was going to come out, he's like, I've revolutionized the way role-playing games are made. This game makes Final Fantasy look like Final Fantasy looks like nothing. And of course, Fable came out and it didn't quite live up to Final Fantasy expectations, but I think there's always been people like that. Maybe they've been painted in maybe a more negative light, but I don't know.
What do you think causes the focus on an individual instead of the group when it comes to gaming? And I ask this because you brought up a good point, Rob. There are names that we can pick out. There are the Miyamotos and the Kojimas of the world that we can kind of pick out and point at as very influential creators. But on the other hand, I could ask you guys to name me one person who works at Bungie or one person who works at Naughty Dog, and you probably wouldn't be able to do it. So what causes those individuals to sort of stand out from the pack when it comes to the game world?
Accessibility, to be honest. And I think you could say that for so many mediums that are out there. And when you take passive mediums like music, TV, and film, in that you just sit there and it hits you. A game, you have to interact, and there's an active, you have to do something, which is why there will always be a barrier for people to pick up a game, because they're going to have to know how to play it. So they can divorce themselves from that entire world and medium altogether. But when you're hit with film nonstop and all you got to do is sit there, you start to realize this stuff. And you start to realize who these individuals are, because it's so easy to access who these people are. It's only now that we've had, 50 years of gaming, and enough of us have been playing enough that we see the patterns of creativity and the same person's footprint over things. So it's all about access to that individual's work. And I think when you look at something like the gaming industry, somebody can get stuck photoshopping background scenes and never get their due diligence, because, it's really hard to stand out in the crowd when you're dealing with 50,000 people.
Yeah, I agree. You look at someone like Phil Fish, love him or hate him, he's still a rock star in the gaming industry, and he made, what's his game again?
Fez.
So he made it by himself, right? I mean, that's going back to the Atari days. Now you're talking about Bungie, where there's 10 million employees or whatever. It's a little bit harder to stand out. Like who's the focus? Who gets the credit, right?
Do you think there's a greater emphasis on creators in games these days?
I think it's part of the marketing when they can say Ed Boon's making the next DC Mortal Kombat like game. Of course, talking about Injustice,
Is that
You know,
maybe
uh,
a side effect of the influence of indie games on the industry currently? Like we're becoming a little more familiar with some of these creators because they are working with small teams or
I would
I
like.
think it's just marketing going the right direction. Like if you can attach a person and make it more about a human story, then why wouldn't you? And if you can talk to the person responsible for this exciting thing and quote them directly, then I think that's better rather than just having a PR rep. A Nintendo PR rep said, "No, we didn't mean to dismiss so and so." And that's it. Like it's a faceless kind of corporate response. But if you hear from like Miyamoto weighing in on the delay of Star Fox, then it means more.
what do you guys think are the positive and negative aspects of being more focused on those single personalities? What's good about that? What's bad about that?
Like anything kind of in the celebrity realm where everything you say, no matter what it is, gets misinterpreted or gets turned around on you, and it's, I don't know. Does that make sense?
I think you become at the mercy of your reputation, good and bad. So Miyamoto creates brilliant games. Well, Star Fox better live up to it because he's got a great Miyamoto. Oh, that's not the Miyamoto I remember.
Yeah.
Kojima used to do good stuff when he worked at Konami.
He did?
And then he cut his hair like Metallica. And he ate my bitch.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can develop this reputation, you can put yourself out there, and this can get marketed, but you're always going to be only as good as the last thing that you created was.
I think that's true, and I had an example of that I wanted to talk about a little bit. But the other thing I wanted to throw out there is, I think it does kind of help promote a misconception about how these games are made, like especially when you're dealing with a AAA title, right? Let's take Metal Gear Solid 5 as an example. If we're advertising that as a Hideo Kojima game and we're really emphasizing the role of Hideo Kojima in that game's production, it is potentially skewing people's views of his actual influence in that production, if that makes sense, right? Like in terms of exactly
100%.
what he did in making that game a reality.
All you have to do is watch the Star Wars Blu-ray behind the scenes to realize that J.J. Abrams is only one guy making choices between a whole bunch of things that other people are creating and coming to him with options. It's really hard to, after you watch something like that, say, is this really a J.J. Abrams film because he got to make the choices when everybody else is really responsible for everything you see?
Yeah, you go to the basics of the concept art, and then the artists create puppets and, costumes or whatever based on that. And then JJ goes around with, yellow means yes or red means no on each drawing. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a Metal Gear game. I mean, Kojima writes those, and Kojima obviously has a vision for what that game is going to look like, and obviously that means he's going to have an influence on how all those elements come together. But ultimately, he's not coding it. He's not programming it. He's not rendering the characters in 3D. He's not doing the concept art.
Right. Yeah.
Likely not.
He's not doing.
Allegedly
He's
not.
not doing the music. He's This is where I wonder if when you have that kind of rock star game persona, if that maybe takes away from people's understanding of exactly what it takes to get that.
But I mean, he's still overseeing everything and everything. It's like George Lucas, back in the day, I'll say now. So everything came to George. Everything comes to Kojima. And he says, yes, this song is good. Yes, this song. You know what I mean?
It's even more than that, though, too, right? He's not just saying yes or no. He's saying, this is what I want to do. Go out and give me options that fit this mold, and then come back. It's just like JJ would say to Daisy Ridley, this is what I want Ray to feel like in this moment. So imagine what that's like in, action. And, okay, no, let's tweak that again. I'm still looking for something different.
Yeah.
Jay, you brought up Peter Molyneux earlier.
Sorry.
Peter Molyneux is probably best known for being the creator of Populous, and then he eventually helped form Lionhead Studios and worked on Fable and the Fable series before leaving Lionhead and he's currently with a company called 22 Cans, and they're working on a game called Goddess, which has been really, really controversial for quite some time. Are you guys kind of familiar with what he's been up to over the last year or so?
Not so much, no.
Yeah, not other than Lionhead, closing down kind of out of nowhere, seemingly.
So this, to me, ties back to what you were saying, Rob, about, you're sort of at the mercy of your reputation, good or bad, going forward. And as Jay pointed out, Peter Molyneux had a reputation for a really long time of being somebody who sort of overpromises and underdelivers. And in his defense, as somebody who's read a lot of interviews with him, I don't think that that's something he does out of I don't think he's a blowhard, and I don't think he's somebody who tries to be dishonest, but I think he does easily get excited by his own ideas, and he gets excited about communicating that stuff to people. And I think that's a great example of why the game industry relies on non-disclosure agreements so much. They don't like people talking about all that stuff so early, because inevitably something gets scaled back, or the final product is going to look different than what you initially envision in your head, right? He did an interview with, I forget what the media outlet was, about a year ago, but they opened the interview by asking him if he was a pathological liar.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the result of that interview is he basically stopped.
Did he say no?
He basically stopped doing media for a year. He kind of did a self-imposed media exile.
Wow.
Because that really gave him this crisis of conscience and crisis of identity, where he's like, do I still want to do this?
He should have responded, no, I'm not a pathological liar.
Am I?
But what he's doing now is he's really stepping away from the media aspect of it. He's not really going to be talking to people in the media anymore about anything that is not already done. He's going to let other people take that on for him. And he's really getting back to the nuts and bolts of programming and coding and design, because he was sort of at the mercy of that, right? He was put into a position where he was that face of the company, and repeatedly, without meaning to, kind of set himself up for failure, for unrealistic expectations, I guess. And to me, that's a really interesting microcosm of the point you were making earlier, Rob.
Did he not create that? Did he not say that Fable was going to be better than Final Fantasy? I remember him saying that. I don't know if it got spun in the press, but that was the big thing. And it's like, okay, well, it better live up to that. Everyone was thinking that, and it came out. And I'm not saying that it was a bad game, but it was not Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with the way he talked about the Fable games was talking about all these features that they wanted to implement that ultimately got scaled back into something that was a lot more manageable. I remember there's a famous anecdote he told where it's like, well, you could get a seed and you can plant this seed, and you can come back later and it'll have grown into a tree, and just talking about all this really kind of epic stuff that he had in mind for the world building in this game, and it just didn't really come to fruition the way he described it.
Yeah.
And I don't really blame that on anything other than his enthusiasm in talking about it, right? He was excited by it and he wanted to talk about it. But the problem is that the final product differed so dramatically from what he was describing.
Well, I think that's a problem, and I'm not trying to fault him, but you got to really watch what you say. If you're going to tell me there's going to be that in the game, and then you're like, oh, wait, we can't do that in the game. You should have maybe researched that a bit before you publicly announced that you're going to have that kind of feature, right?
It's hard, though, right? Because, I mean, we've been through that with Nintendo Quest, and we're going to go through it again with the Nintendo Quest game that we're working on. Like, what is it? What are we doing? And, like, we want to talk about it because people want information, but at the same time, we can't talk about it, so all we can say is, yes, we're working on the game. And it's the same thing with the documentary on Kitty. People want to know how long it is, and does it include full-length, concert songs, and is it all multi-angle cut, and is this person in it? Do you guys talk about this specific track for the deeper meaning? Do you guys? It's like, it's hard to say until it's done, and then do you risk saying no, it's not this, and no, it's not that?
You don't.
Spoil people like, oh, it's not this. Oh, well, I don't care now. Even though what you have may be great on its own, but if you say something that might damage that enthusiasm, it's hard.
Well, think about it this way, right? You guys have done a fair amount of talking about the Nintendo Quest game.
We talk about our game and our movie and our stuff all the time.
But you've had episodes of the podcast where you literally talk about, here's some of the stuff we want to do. Here's how we want to approach this. Here's how we want to approach that. And the reality is, when the game's getting made, you may not be able to hit all that stuff, right? You may have to change the way that.
And you'll never. But I'm
look.
saying you'll never hear us, make a statement saying, "Oh, we're gonna have this, this, and this" before we've talked to Joe or worked it out. I mean, we've had episodes where we've talked about ideas we want in the game, but we've never said this is going to be in it, this is going to be in it, this is going to be in it, and then go back to Joe and say, "Oh, well, this better be in it," and he's like, "Yeah, I can't possibly do that," and now we're like, "Oops." Right?
Whoopsie doo. I mean, again, not to go back to the kitty thing, but I'm right in the middle of this for the sake of this discussion, where I think last month we announced that it's going to be a 2-part film with 90 minutes each. Or, well, we said 78 to 80 minutes, somewhere in there. But it was scary announcing that. It's like, well, if we say it's going to be 2 films, it has to be 2 films. You can't take it back once you've put it out there.
Yeah.
Without, the storm coming to hit you.
And it just might have been a case with Peter. Well, he was just very, very excited, very proud of his work, which he has every right to be. And he just got a little too, happy. I don't know, but he shouldn't have said all that stuff because the gaming community just killed him for it, right?
Well, look at some of the stuff that. I'm trying to think of the company that was developing that Superman game. It was Factor 5, right? The Rogue Squadron company. For N64, they were working on a Superman game. It was a sandbox style. They lost their publisher. They started funding it themselves. And there's a whole kind of documentary, so to speak. It's 15, 20 minutes long on YouTube. There's all the stuff that they've been promising for years and years about what this was going to be and, what it was and what you could do. And then they went bankrupt as a result.
Can I derail this like I usually do and just ask, why does Superman only defend Metropolis and not the whole Earth? If he can get to any point on the planet in seconds. Do you guys ever think about that?
He does defend the whole Earth. Haven't you seen Superman 4, Quest for Peace?
When I was zero.
He de-arms every nation of nuclear weapons.
Is that the norm now in the current Superman story? Do you guys know? Derailed success.
I think Justice League is in place for the whole reason that nobody has to be everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, Superman's Superman, but no person can be everywhere at once.
No, but you could do the majority of the cleanup.
I don't think he's defending Metropolis. I think everybody just goes to Metropolis to create havoc because they know Superman's there and they want to pick a fight with him.
Bunch of instigators. Okay, sorry, I just popped in there.
Well, Superman's a victim of his own reputation. It all ties in.
There you go.
If he wasn't advertising as the big blue Boy Scout, then maybe there'd be less fights and problems with the
Let me
world.
try to derail it further then. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So I want to change tracks a little bit, and I want to talk about game media. This is something that's really emerging, especially with YouTube and Twitch taking
Polygon
popularity.
and Kotaku.
Well, sure, websites, but I mean, we've had video game television dedicated to this too.
You say that with air quotes around the word television.
I'm glad you caught
Video
that.
game television.
Great shows like Attack of the Show.
Yeah, what are some of your favorite gaming media personalities?
Sarah Underwood.
Tommy Tallarico.
100%.
Victor Lucas.
I think Tommy's a really interesting case, actually.
Yes, so do I.
Not because to some he's going to have some degree of fame for his work as a host, right? But he's got some degree
That's
of fame
where I knew him from
for his
first,
work as a composer.
I knew him first as the guy on Electric Playground before I understood that, wait a second, this guy's won a lot of awards and worked on a lot of games.
My favorite,
and he's the cousin of Steven Tyler.
My favorite's always been Scott Jones of Electric Playground. He's a colorful character, and I appreciate it.
He and those guys, and we mentioned everybody from Electric Playground, have actually reviewed Nintendo Quest, and still, to me, that was one of the most interesting things. That's kind of like one of those watershed moments for me when I saw that review come out.
I remember that.
I don't.
Yeah, you do. You almost got in a car accident.
I have no recollection of that.
Yeah,
Go back and check out GamerCast from Labor Day weekend.
I had a list of
GamerCast.
gaming personalities, and Victor and Tommy were definitely on there. But some of the other major ones I can think of just off the top of my head were Jeff Keighley from G4, and he produces and hosts the Game
Adam
Awards.
Sessler,
Adam Sessler, Jessica Chobot is all over the place now.
box art participant.
Yep, used to work for
Well, I heard
IGN and is now currently hosting on The Nerdist. What do you guys think makes for a good media personality when it comes to games media?
Somebody who isn't afraid of speaking their mind and promoting the stuff that they do without any shame, like Nintendo Quest.
Are you done?
Available at Nintendo Quest.
Yeah, I think someone like Patrick Scott Patterson, who just kind of tells it how it is, and yeah, it's just like you take it or leave it. I really respect that because I think that's what we try to do on this show. I mean, I know.
Yeah, but the difference is, I don't want to knock us down, and I'll speak for myself. How about that? There's so much I don't know about the gaming industry, and I think to be a good media spokesperson, you have to be very well informed. And I don't think I'm educated enough in as many areas as I should be in order to be considered somewhat of a media personality. You know what I mean? Like people that are like Adam Sessler, everybody that you just mentioned, even PSP is very well informed of like every era of gaming, what's going on in the industry side, what's going on the fan side. I think that's a crucial important to have a wealth of knowledge at your disposal and the continuing need to find more knowledge and learn more.
Do you think there's a different standard for games media than for normal media when it comes to the people who represent it?
No. Like I said, I think if you're going to be a media personality, regardless of the industry that you're going to represent, and that could be the sports guy on the evening news, or the movie critic, or the weatherman, you've got to know your field. That's the biggest thing. You don't know your field, you're not well-spoken, you don't have a certain charisma about you.
Yeah.
I mean, those are all like kind of TV tropes, but, you know.
Yeah, you got to be interesting. You have to pull people in. And I think especially in the gaming world, when there's so many different personalities, yeah, you really have to kind of have something to stand out.
The other aspect I want to look at when it comes to game media is the stuff that is creator driven. So things like YouTube videos, things like video series. How do you guys think that producing that kind of content differs from the traditional, gaming media, if you will, like something like G4 or Nerdist?
Well, there's less rules, zero restrictions. You can do what you want, no matter what.
Yeah, you could say what you want. I think edit it how you want. It's just that freedom, right?
I think there's maybe a perception of less bias. Like there's potentially less media influence
Like
on
no
the content that they create.
sponsorship kind of thing.
Exactly. Like, like people can kind of feel free to cut loose. And I think there's a perception that those personalities are somehow more honest because they're not potentially influenced by that stuff.
Do you remember the Jeff Gershman incident from, maybe 5 to 10 years ago? Gershman was a personality on GameSpot, and their sponsor for that month was Kane and Lynch 2. It was Square, whoever does that. And he reviewed it, and he just said, this is one of the worst games ever made. It's absolutely terrible. And GameSpot fired him for that. Of course, he went on to do Giant Bomb, and Giant Bomb just kills it, so it's awesome. But
Yeah, I don't know that people are free of bias just because they're on their own independent YouTube channel. I mean, there are still products of the culture in that bubble that kind of dictate the kind of stuff that we should put out there because the kind of things that get views and the hot button topics. Ideology is inescapable, right?
I wouldn't disagree with that, Rob. I think there's maybe I wouldn't say that there isn't bias. I think maybe people wear those biases a little more on their sleeves. Like when I watch a Yahtzee Croshaw zero punctuation review, I can pretty much guarantee he's not going to have kind things to say about the game that he makes, and most people kind of take that with a grain of salt, right? But I think there is a perception out there, at least, that being brutally blunt about what you're covering is somehow more honest, rightly or wrongly.
But is it all about honesty? Like, what is, like, honesty, right? Just what, uncensored? Unregulated? Just because you say something doesn't mean it's honest.
Well, it could be your honest thoughts about it, like how you really feel without cushioning things, right? Instead of playing it safe, you say, you know, everyone in the world likes Red Dead Redemption. You know what? I don't like it. I think it's crap.
But you look at, again, let's talk about Nintendo Quest. Is Nintendo Quest an honest movie when it comes to exploring Nintendo culture? It's hard to say that it's honest because we were so affected by Nintendo as a company at an early age where it left an impression on us where we really couldn't develop an honest, critical opinion of everything they were doing. Because of our nostalgic tie for something like that, those games, that company, it's going to influence how we think about that in the same way that we're influenced by things that rub us the wrong way nowadays because of how gaming has been up to this point.
No, I think the Nintendo stats speak for themselves, though, right? I mean, you can't argue those stats, and clearly Nintendo was the winner. So, I mean, I believe there is also a reason why we did do Nintendo Quest about NES. Yeah, sure, there's this nostalgia, but it's the greatest console of all time, right?
Right, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I know what you're
obviously,
saying.
if you're a kid of a certain age, yeah, you're gonna love Nintendo because it was like everything.
But I mean, I love Nintendo, but I also had a Genesis and a Super Nintendo and whatever else. But I still love Nintendo the most. The games were just that much better. There was just that quality to Nintendo. That's PSP's line.
Nintendo was a word used to describe video games.
Yeah.
Glenn, how do you feel about any of that?
I see the argument you're making, Rob. I mean, if you love Nintendo, it's very hard to make a movie talking about the importance of Nintendo that is coming from a balanced perspective, right? Like somebody out there would potentially make the argument that they weren't as influential, and they'd have their own reasons for making that argument.
Yeah, somebody would probably bring up the fact that they ran a cab service in a hooker hotel in the 30s, and that's where they made a lot of their money before going into family-friendly toys. So are their morals really just? And this, family-first software is built on the seedy nature of gambling, cards, prostitution, and a quick round-trip ride home.
Why do you think we like it so much?
Power Tour rolls again.
One last question.
4 days in Vegas. Ow!
There's one last question I want to ask you to wrap up, guys, and that is, what aspect of the gaming industry do you think deserves more attention? Who are the personalities we should hear more about than we do?
I don't know.
I would say the people behind the scenes, the graphic designers, the sound engineers. Like I would like to see more of that. I would like to see more rock stars in those areas come around, and we get to celebrate those guys and the amazing things they've done.
I'll give you a two-part answer. One, I think people just need to understand the process more so we can understand who's doing what. Because unless you understand how something like games are made, or even how bands make music and record music and put it out there, and who's responsible, like what a record producer does versus what the band does, and that distinction, and what does a programmer do versus what a director does. People really won't understand what it means. So you got to have that education behind it. And I would like to see a little bit more attention pointed towards the writers, the people that do a lot of writing in games. There's no traditional writer position in the game industry. There have been terms like narrative designer, game director. The reality seems to be that everybody does a little bit of writing, but there isn't necessarily always one kind of person writing that screenplay like there is in film.
I know for me, one of the things that came to mind, especially in light of Tommy Tallarico coming up in our conversation, is I think composers are criminally under-recognized. And that's not to say that there aren't other roles that I think deserve more attention, but like off the top of my head, I can think of Tommy Tallarico and I can think of Nobuo Uematsu, who is the famous composer of the Final Fantasy series. And I struggle to come up with other names, and yet those songs in so many classic games, they're so influential to all of us, and nobody really knows much about the people who are responsible for them.
But I think you could look to any kind of, craft and say the same thing. I think at least the difference is with something like music and music composition, you can say, well, that is mainly one guy's thing. So you can say, like, was it Koji Kondo, Mario and Zelda, and like all the big Nintendo themes? Like, he's responsible for that. At least when you're talking about like composition and musical composition, you can relate it to like a John Williams. You can relate it to like a James Horner, so you understand what that is. But who knows what a 3D modeler does and how important that is to the game that you're playing, or what a background, artist is, or what a previs artist does, or what a voice casting director does, or what a game producer does. Stan Brick. Even you don't know what you do. What do you do?
Easy.
Is that an honest question?
Yeah, what do you do?
I assist in planning out development sprints, so development schedules, figure out tasks, lay out the stuff that we need done and the people that we need to actually do those tasks. I do a little bit of design work, and I do honestly a lot of little things beyond that. But in terms of production, that's the overall one.
You know what I mean, though? Like, how do you describe what a game producer does?
Yeah, it's really just trying to help schedule and lay out tasks and make sure things are being done efficiently and they're being done along the schedule, and really just sort of acting as that liaison between the different teams to make sure that things are getting done in the way that they need to be done. That's kind of the big picture answer, I guess.
Here's the big question for you, Glenn. This is something I never ask you every week because I just take it for granted. Did we accomplish in our discussion today what you hope to accomplish with the outline that you came up with?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, just checking.
I think so, yeah. Like I try to make the outlines open enough that I won't always be able to anticipate what I'm going to get when we do it. But yeah, I think we usually wind up at least getting roughly where I'm hoping we will by the time we're done.
Okay, just giving you a little shout out there. Glenn's the one that comes up with the outlines for 90% of the shows. We all brainstorm, but he edits, produces, and give him a writer credit. All right, heading over to the Patreon side. If you are a subscriber, you get to keep listening. Everybody else, it's just $1 a month, and you get extra content every single episode. And Patreon subs from last year are getting their Nintendo Quest Power Tour DVD for free, already in the mail and being delivered to them. So you got lots of perks to become a Patreon subscriber. All right, well, that'll do for another Whippercast game discussion. I hope you're 21 and remember this in 50 years, or whatever Jay's point was. And see you later. You guys can say bye.
And I am your co-host, Jay Bartlett. Producing this monstrosity is Prickridge Easy He Stamp Prick.
You just call me Easy E?
Easy He.
Okay, yeah, I don't have a response to that. Thanks for listening, everybody.
God, I always do the heavy lifting. It's not so easy, is it, boys? It's what happens when you become 50. Play the age card for us, Jay.
I've been blessed with the body of a 21-year-old, thank God. But the majority of the people...
Ever since you were 7, you were blessed with the body of a 21-year-old. Led to a lot of problem in the early years, and it's paying off now.